This is Tech Beats and Bytes.
So today we have brought back a original member of Digital
OG.
Grass. Rosie has
Hey
come
guys.
back from the world of what was it?
Higher
Higher,
education.
higher education.
Postgraduate.
Yeah, all that good stuff. So, Rosie, real quick, why don't you tell the people who you are and give yourself a little introduction? I don't think you've never really been on camera. So, asking
No,
a question.
I don't do this camera thing often.
Talk to the mic, please. Talk to the mic.
As they mentioned, my name is Rosie Nwakanma. I recently just graduated from the University of Miami in, speak louder, okay, with a master's in industrial engineering, focusing on managing technology. And I currently work in the supply chain field, global source at Carnival Corporation. It's a high level.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Let's
Gotta
just
make
get
that
that point
distinction.
out there, just in case you didn't know.
So, real quick question on that, because I know that you're talking about engineering and STEM, which is a beautiful thing. How are you planning to use your higher degree, and how does that play into your career?
So right now, as I mentioned, I'm in supply chain. So my goal ultimately is to transition into a more technology role. So my focus is really to be able to simplify processes by leveraging technologies in the different areas that businesses operate in. So whether it's marketing, IT, HR, different things that they do within the organization. So it's not just putting the processes down in paper, but also looking at what opportunities are there from a technology perspective for improved efficiencies.
Cool.
So, you are going more into technology, engineering, and you have all these things going on. When you start looking around in the room, how many other Rosies are in the room?
Right.
Rosie is one of a kind. No, I mean, honestly, so I think one of the things that separates me and why I've been fortunate enough to pretty much get honestly opportunities is because I do come with a different, vast experience. So what many people don't know is that my undergrad degree is in biology pre-med with a minor in chemistry and
You're one of them
business.
real smart people.
Well, because originally I wanted to be a doctor.
Doctor, right.
Okay.
And then my uncle is like the head neurosurgeon in D.C. And one spring break, I went to go visit him. And I was like, this is not my life. This is not the life that I wanted. So from there, I kind of transitioned to get my MBA. And while I got my MBA, I kind of got transitioned into career in supply chain. So that's how I got into what I do today.
And then now you're pivoting into tech.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at where the world is going,
Right.
technology is really key, right? So it's, and I've always been big to identify those areas where there's not a lot of people and there's not a lot of, especially us women, so that I can help pave the way and identify opportunities to. I like being the outlier.
Right. And I was
I
going
like
to
being
ask, so
outlier.
you're not intimidated by being in that space, which is what you hear oftentimes when you're talking about women in tech or women in STEM, is the sort of intimidation and not necessarily feeling welcome in the space.
So, and I hear that a lot, but what I've seen a lot more is that you're starting to see more women take the challenge, right? I was the only black in my class graduating in this past
So
spring.
black,
Black
female
women.
or male?
Just female. Excuse
Okay,
me, female.
okay.
Yes. And it's things like that when you hear people talk about women in tech. It's like, don't just talk about it, be about it, right? So what are the opportunities? Where do you find your niche? And for me, being in a corporate environment and understanding that one of the biggest challenges that we do have is how do we improve processes? Everyone talks about efficiency. Everyone talks about being effective, but how effective are we just from a day-to-day? And then how do we leverage some of these everyone talks about AI, but what does AI do for you? Everyone
Right.
talks about technology, but what does that do for you? So I want to be that person that's do some extra research, understand different technologies, and how do we leverage it to improve. So it's kind of how I mean, honestly, when I first started this journey, I didn't even think it was doable. I was like, why, Rosie? But the more I started, initially I wanted to do engineering management. And as we go through life and you learn more about the importance of technology and where technology could potentially go, I said, hey, I was the girl for that. So that's how I ended up there.
Oh, that's cool. And I think that will show a lot of women, especially those who are sort of teetering on the idea of doing tech or doing something in engineering, that is possible. And even to do it at a graduate level, right? So you may not have done it as your undergrad, but you can pursue that postgraduate. So Well, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, and what helps me a lot too is I have a lot of friends that are in the tech that work for the Microsoft and the Googles and all that. So they were definitely influential in, they say you are the company that you keep. So my
Right.
friends were definitely influential in pushing me and ensuring that I stayed through the path. Because it's not an easy path, but
Right.
it's definitely fulfilling once you finally cross that finish line.
Do you think that with the higher education, is it going to be, is it implemented more? Is it a better route for you with a career? Does the knowledge help you more than the degree, or does the degree help you more than the knowledge? Because sometimes it seems like if you're ahead of the curve with your business, you don't really get to implement the things you've learned.
So I think it's a bit of both, right? So it depends on the perspective and where you are. So for me, I think the knowledge has been great because it reinforced things I already knew or things that are around you but you don't know about a lot. And then by going through school and understanding more about the theory and then having to be in an environment where you see the application, you have a better understanding of what you're actually studying and, how it can actually be used. So when
Pull
you talk...
Rosie's mic to the edge of the table.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was loud.
No, you're not.
So when you talk about
There you
the
go.
opportunities as far as from an educational perspective, I think it was great from a knowledge. But then from a application, I still think that it's not necessarily that I'm in the forefront. It's just that I identified a gap and there may be opportunities that exist. And then if you look at it, some companies are starting to see that it exists. It's just they don't find the right people. This is another issue that I think I've identified here in Miami, noting that a lot of people are entrepreneurs here and that there's not a lot of people believe there's not a lot of opportunities here in Miami. But it's interesting because a lot of corporations feel that they can't find the right people here because, and which is crazy because you have all these major institutions here, but yet they can't find the right people for the roles that they're looking for in the different environments, especially in tech too.
But do you think that didn't mean to cut you off, but do
No,
you
go
think
ahead.
that that's like a grass is greener? So people are just looking for like the Silicon Valley like profile, and it's like, you don't have that Stanford background, you don't have that like MIT, so you graduate from UM, you're not quite the right fit. Is that sort of what the issue is? What have you
I
seen?
don't think that's it. I think what happens is that a lot of people that do go to school here want to go elsewhere. In addition to they don't tap all the resources that are here. There are a lot of corporations here in Miami that a lot of people aren't familiar with that I think that's where the gap really is lack of...
So the outreach to the community, and then also just people realizing that there are opportunities here.
Yeah, I was about to say, but do the corporations actually reach out? Because like when you say a lot of corporations, I know Cisco, Burger King, Magic Leap, Royal Caribbean, Carnival.
Yeah.
Norwegian.
Those are the core
Norwegian.
ones that everybody knows. If you do some research, there are at least, there's a significant amount, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, of corporations here. Trust me, I've looked.
But it seems like the corporations here they're not involved in the community. Like when you go to places like Philly, Philly had their Philly Next Week, and their tech week was highly supported by Comcast and a lot of other companies. Like I don't see any large corporations in South Florida kind of taking the lead when it comes to the STEM aspect of actually reaching out and communicating with our community. So how do we fix that?
I think part of the challenge is the way that Miami is structured. You have different cities.
Talking about the setup of the city
Yeah,
itself?
the setup of the city,
Yeah.
right? So it's very difficult, and every city has its identity, and then people have their perception of what they believe those cities represent. I remember the young lady from Willamisha, what was her name?
Misha?
Where,
Well,
yeah,
Misha?
yeah, where she said that I want to bring tech to the hood. I
Right.
thought that was so great because I think that's the challenge that people identify with different cities and they assume that these are the type of people that live here and they're not looking for those type of people when ideally I think that that's the challenge of the disservice that the city of Miami does for the people here, that it's very integrated. You find people of different classification, different levels within each sub community or whatever they call it, but I think that's where the gap is really that the people are here but they're not being tapped and everything is online, but it's not always only the way, because a lot of stuff is word of mouth.
Yeah.
A lot of the corporations is word of mouth. Who do you know that knows somebody? And the people within the city of Miami don't really collaborate and communicate within each other to understand what's really going on in the community, because they think to look outside versus looking in the city in which they live in.
You think too much like us for us to be able to ask questions, because that's like the next thing I was going to say, because the collaboration efforts here are just horrible. So how do we build like better conferences and better networking in South Florida? What would you see as a possible solution for that problem?
That's a good question. I think it's more just word of mouth and communication. I think the challenge and the break.
But we have hoarders of information. So people like, they find stuff and they just hold it like near to their chest and they don't share.
There's a lot that goes on in the city of Miami that people just don't attend. And I think the problem is the people. The opportunities are there, the communication is there, but the people aren't willing to do. We're always looking for the easy way out. I mean, it's, you'd be surprised when you talk to, being in a corporate environment and having worked with hiring managers and hearing some of the feedback that they say, you'd be surprised how many people that they interview with, some people just aren't qualified, or if they're qualified, they don't even go and apply for the job because they think they may not get it because, oh, it's this corporation or it's that corporation. Or if they do get the job, they may not want it because of location. It's in Doral versus, Fort Lauderdale. So there are challenges there as well, again, because of the way the city is made up.
So we're a city of low self-esteem is what you're saying?
I didn't say that. But I think that, I won't even say, I just think that it's taking initiative and really understanding what the city offers. 'Cause I think the city of Miami offers a lot that a lot of people aren't truly aware of, because and I'm actually a victim of it too. I don't do anything outside of Edgewater area.
Yeah, we know you do not come to Broward County. Anti-Broward.
Yeah, so I mean, and so it's surprising that I actually work in Doral, because even though most of my life and everything I do revolves around this area, I'm always big about taking advantage of opportunities, which may be an extra 30-minute drive to Doral. Morning and back. Sometimes turns into an hour.
30-minute drive can make you not single again, but
Are you moving into the next topic?
No, we're
That's
not.
what that sounded like.
not yet. We're gonna go. I'm gonna go to it though. Because, well, you know what? Actually, I will.
No, we're not.
No, it's because this is the thing. If you have, and so I think one of the things me and Latoya started talking about is how much everyday life integrates to business development. And there's a lot of things that happen that we don't really pay attention to. So if you think about the lifestyle of being in your 30s or 40s in New York, Philly, or somewhere else, where there's a high level of work density and you have this type of person, and it's not to sound funny, but like the educated professional $50,000-$60,000 plus careers, and they're all in this dense area. So no matter where they come from, they're taking a train, whether it's the Amtrak, whether it's the subway, they're walking. You have that chance of bumping into somebody and meeting somebody.
Right.
Now that works on both the business side and the relationship side. But if you think about South Florida, where's the place where you would say there's going to be that high density of higher level education, $60,000 plus job, careers, and things of that level, where it's not just one company? Because some people, they're iffy about dating somebody or messing with somebody that works with them. But, in Philly or even in New York, one train ride could, 20 different opportunities. We don't have that density here. But even though we could be talking about this from a dating aspect, I think it comes from a collaboration and business aspect too, because we just don't have a lot of opportunities.
And I think that's
organic opportunities. They're almost
that's what
forced.
I was alluding to earlier, right? Because I think that's where the break occurs, is that there aren't opportunities where we can all come together and collaborate. Because, I mean, if you look at where so when I say there's a lot of corporations here in Miami, there's some in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Plantation, Doral, Brickell. It's everywhere. So it's not, whereas in New York or Philly, there's, a strip
Clusters.
of people, or, so that I think that's where our breakdown occurs, and where we lose the opportunities of where we can come together more as a community.
Right, because when you're stuck in traffic, you're not talking to the person next to you.
That's what I'm not doing.
Right. You're trying to pass them.
Until I almost get hit.
Right.
Hey, what you?
Right. If you're talking, you're cursing them out.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen on 95.
So
don't use your signal.
And with that
Right.
being, the courtesy stick. Just a little stick to the left of your steering wheel. What about Brightline. So is Brightline actually? This is how I feel. Let me just get this. First of all, everybody that's trying to beat the train, this is not your cargo train. You would not outrun that train. Just wait. The train moves pretty fast. It's literally a 2 to 3 minute delay.
Train.
It's a high-speed train. You can actually wait. That's when you should send that text message
Right.
that you send them when you're driving on 95. That's number one. Number two, I don't know if as many people are actually going to use this train as they think, except for possibly partying, festivals, and if I happen to live east of 95. Outside of that, I don't see it fixing. And a lot of your larger companies, Magic Leap, these companies they're very west. So
Right.
I'm not going to take a train and then have to commit to a $18 to $25 Uber one way.
Right.
I don't know if the train actually fixes the problem we have and
No.
it actually gets people more.
It's the same situation with the Metro Rail.
Yeah.
You could ride the Metro Rail, but if you're going to get it, then you still have to go out.
Right.
So it doesn't work the same. What makes the subway work so well in Manhattan or just New York City, period, is because it has many veins. So it goes north, south, east, west, and you just do a lot of transferring. Whereas for us, everything is very east. You do have for the Metro Rail some of the lines that go west, but after that, you then have to take a cab or get a
Right.
bus. And if you're on the bus, you're in traffic with everybody else.
I ain't even know about a cab system in Miami, by the way.
Look, they out there ish, but that's what I'm saying.
Besides at the airport, I've never really seen a cab.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to what we talked about: business development, business opportunity, connections, whether it's relationship, is the makeup of the way the city was designed.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you
So-
said that because that leads into another topic.
I'm actually going to Brightline on Sunday, by the way.
Let us know how that
But
works.
for what? What are you using it for?
Are you
We're
going
gonna
from
go to
Miami
Fort
or
Lauderdale Beach.
Fort Lauderdale Beach?
So then what's your plan? So you're going to get up to Fort Lauderdale and then Uber to the beach?
Can you keep a tab of how much that costs and let us know?
Will do.
So, when you're talking about the veins of north, south, east, and west, is this a city that's actually built for the infrastructure to grow? Or do we have to actually regrow this infrastructure? Because I don't see that connection of how do I tie somebody from west, even Weston to Miramar, but how do I tie somebody from Weston to somebody in Hialeah? Like, I don't see any structure that's actually being bought to make this region operate and grow together.
No. Transportation has been one of the high topics when you're talking about South Florida because it's an issue that hasn't been fixed.
Yeah.
And you have all these high rises coming and the streets are still the same. You're seeing a ton of, development happening in downtown. They're trying to make this a really high density area, but there's no solution.
But I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Let's take away traffic. Let's take away the buildings. What about the culture and the heritage? It seems like there's nothing to latch on to here that people actually know about.
I don't know if I agree with
Yeah,
that.
I was going to say,
I think that it goes back to every sub-city or community has an identity.
Right.
It's not a Miami identity.
What is the identity of Miami?
It's not a Miami as a holistic identity, but there's Little Haiti, Little Havana. There are cultures within the city, and that's where the challenge comes, right? Because in Miami, people adapt to what they're comfortable. You heard me say that earlier. I live in Edgewater. I don't get outside of Edgewater. If it's not to go to work, to go to church, I stay within my vicinity. So I don't allow myself, and I'm consider myself a victim. I don't allow myself to get outside to explore those other cultures. From time to time, if there's a particular event in Little Haiti, I may go down there, but on a regular basis, I don't do that. So that's a fault of me, which means it's a fault for multiple people here in Miami that don't allow the different cities to start to merge and learn more about each other because they're comfortable in the environment in which they're in.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's a push from when you're talking about like the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau is the whole multicultural tourism and highlighting those different neighborhoods because you're seeing development happening. And
That
so
they
there's
do
a
highlight it or they don't
They
highlight
do.
it?
It's multicultural tourism, as you saw. That's like a huge push when you're talking about, especially Miami specifically. I don't know so much about Broward, but it's a huge push for Miami because you have Little Havana, Little Haiti, the Grove, Overtown, and all of these different neighborhoods have a history and a culture that needs to be known. So you have it where they're doing a lot of different things. And even if you think about, because a lot of people like to compare like Miami, New York, because there's that whole relationship. So New York, even with the boroughs, they have neighborhoods within them.
Right.
So you have like Little Italy, you have, you know, the whole Jewish pocket that's like in Brooklyn, you have Queens that has its whole identity, you have Harlem, even though gentrification is happening. But before, you definitely had sort of each neighborhood had its own thing. And Miami is very similar to that. Hialeah is definitely Hialeah. Opalaka is definitely Opalaka.
Okay. So today, and as somebody said, the devil doesn't need an advocate. All you got to do is sell your soul. So I'm not playing devil's advocate. I actually want to understand. If you look at the perspective of somewhere like New Orleans, if I had to identify New Orleans, I'm thinking of French Quarters, I'm thinking of Mardi Gras. There's things that I can define that define the element of New Orleans that drives people to New Orleans. I asked the question. You guys actually straight up Republican me. You skirted right past the question.
But
what is the actual identity of Miami
South
that draws
Beach.
people?
It's as simple as that. It's South Beach. Because the reality of
Okay,
it is...
no, that's where I wanted to go. I agree with you, but that's
Right.
what I'm saying. Where's the rest of the culture? How do we get the rest of it? Because the culture of, like somewhere like New Orleans goes down to the core of its food. You know, it goes down to the bands, all the way down to Ninth Ward.
But I don't think we can compare ourselves to New Orleans, because New Orleans is a different city, right? So Miami has way more people from different countries than New Orleans.
Yeah.
New Orleans is very black and white.
Yeah.
You have Cajuns,
New
you have
Orleans is
Creoles.
very black and white, but it's a lot more integrated than Miami is.
But
But I don't know about that though. But my point is that you don't have so many pockets of cultures.
I've never went anywhere
within the same city.
I've never went anywhere in Miami that I have in New Orleans where I've seen as many black people and white people interacting together, actually having a good time. We are very segregated down here.
But New Orleans is segregated too. Like,
yeah.
I would not from what I've experienced.
Right.
Are you talking about in New Orleans, like the proper French Quarter area?
Yeah.
But New Orleans is bigger than just French Quarter.
But I mean, okay, if we start talking about the specific little areas like the Ninth Ward, it's not a whole bunch. But at the same time, there's more people coming over there and actually doing
tours
there.
But that's like you saying like Miami is literally South Beach. Like Miami is bigger than South Beach. New Orleans is bigger than French Quarter.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to talk about South Beach. I'm past South Beach because we understand.
But you're comparing the two things. That's
South Beach, but you're comparing New Orleans. What you're comparing from New Orleans is South Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's where it is that Miami is unique. Miami definitely has a lot of opportunities, but it's how do you get, because even within the sub-cities, you can't even get the people to talk to each other. Everyone wants to identify with who they are, and what they represent. So until there is some type of push to integrate more, it's always going to be what it is. Yeah. I mean, we talk politics. We're not talking about it today, but I mean, I think that's where it comes into play. What do they do? Because if you look at Miami and how it's ran, every city has its own everything.
Yeah, you have a lot of micro cities within Miami. Almost every neighborhood is a city.
Yep.
That doesn't work with the other city.
Right.
That doesn't.
Right.
But that's my part. That's my part. The part is, everything is a flyover versus if you're coming from Harlem, you may stop through the meat market. You may go through Soho. You may go through Manhattan.
But that's
you may go to Brooklyn.
That's not everyone.
Right,
again, because they operate the same way, but you got to remember, we're from the outside looking in, where you're from the inside looking at what you're within, what you understand. So when you look as a tourist,
are you talking about from a business side?
Just in general, from a tourist perspective, I think that it's easy to make those assumptions, right? Because that's what it is, because we really don't know. Unless you live in a city, you have a better indication and understanding what it was. I would have never moved to Miami if all I knew was South Beach. It wasn't until I had to come to Miami for work and understand that there was more to Miami than South Beach, then I made the decision that, I could actually live here.
I was about to say, because a lot of my feedback is more so coming from the last 2 weeks of conversation, because it's time to expand. So whether that the goal of the expansion right now is going to be we already have an office in Philly, so probably most likely an apartment in Philly where it's easier to stay for extended time frames. And a lot of people from the Northeast specifically bring up, and I hate, I'll do it now, but a lot of people should know, most of the time when I'm talking, for the sake of flow and conversation, I'm not really speaking directly on my opinion. It's normally conversations I've had with others, but it's like I don't have the time to be like, oh, but somebody said whatever. You can feel however you want to feel. But a lot of people from the Northeast, that's why they say they don't like doing business down here, because they don't feel like we're connected in any way, shape, or form.
But
and a lot of people say they don't feel comfortable.
I don't think it's a city of Miami thing. It's an individual thing, right? So I think that I can agree with that statement, is that the people of Miami, again, are comfortable with their people. When we talk about the different...
You mean comfortable within our little micro cities?
Right, because, and the same thing happens for them there, because they probably do better business with people that you can relate to, that you can understand, whereas that's what makes Miami unique, is that it is a city of multicultural individuals from South America, from, wherever it is that you can, So I think that its uniqueness is kind of what makes it challenging for other people, because you identify with people like you a lot easier. So there's a lot of different challenges with being from the North versus being from the South, outside of it being Miami versus Philly or New York.
Right, and I think, too, a lot of people look at Miami as a leisure city and not a city of business.
Yeah.
So if you're coming from Philly,
thing.
if you're coming from D.C., if you're coming from New York, you're like, oh, no, I go to Miami to play. I'm not necessarily coming here to do business. Because you don't see the same infrastructure. You don't see a strong financial district like what you see in New York or what you see in D.C. You don't have the same comparison. So if you're looking for it, you have to look a little bit different. It doesn't have the same label or the same packaging as what you would see up north.
And there's opportunities here. I mean, Miss Jessie, wasn't she in New York, and then she's now here? I think what happens is that people get so caught up on the idea of South Beach that they don't take the opportunity to explore things outside. Brickell, you have downtown. These are areas that are growing. I mean, we have a financial district here. A lot of people probably don't know
even
that.
think about it.
Yeah.
In that aspect.
You talking about the cocaine cowboy strip?
You call it, you call it what
Brickell.
you want to call it.
Right. Brickell, everybody, is our financial district. For those who are like, what is she talking about?
Cocaine
It's
cowboy
Brickell.
strip.
That's actually downtown.
Banks with condos on top of it.
Right, that's downtown.
So, where's the fix, though? Now that we've identified the problem, and like Jasmine, I've heard you in the crowd talking about... No, that was you. Talking about leadership and the aspect.
And she's talking about politics, too?
Yeah, but I don't see how any of our leaders of politics do that, because they barely can complete the things within their own phases. You're right, because we got a lot of CRAs that are about to sunset with all the money still sitting there. I'll give you that. I will give you that.
Better tell them. She need to say that on the mic. We do.
The curse words. Have you not watched it? Have you not
Right,
seen
but
it?
basically, since she wasn't on the mic, she was just basically saying that there needs to be accountability when it comes to politicians and the money that has been given, as well as CRA money.
I agree, because a lot of people have gotten away with money and haven't produced anything.
Yeah, or building huge stadiums that don't have the fans.
Shout out to the Marlins.
It's a beautiful space, though.
It
Look,
is.
Beyonce did that thing. She came down
It's
for
a beautiful
formation.
space, but that man made off well. And I mean,
And he held on to the team until his contract was up with the city of Miami, so we had to give him nothing.
well, I
don't
think
know
it's
much
one of
about
those
Miami
things.
politics.
I don't really do politics either, but I do money. I think it's one of those things where being a young city, it's like you're still naive. And I feel there's a lot of areas of naiveness in South Florida, but I think a lot of that could be fixed just with the proper lines of communication to, I don't know, how do you start communicating with your constituents to actually hear what their problems are and what kind of solutions
Right.
they're seeking? Like, like we were talking about it until Junction 2027 comes out, plug. Where would we go to have those conversations?
Yeah, or even not focusing so much on being a tourist destination, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to be taken seriously, you have to really start investing in other industries.
Take care of your home before you start taking care of everybody
So
else.
instead of building huge stadiums, it's like, well, let's maybe really focus on being a financial powerhouse, because we like being the gateway to Latin America. But what does that really look like? What does that really mean? We have a port, we have a train system, but a lot of people don't even know about the opportunities that exist there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of money coming through that port, but how much does that play into the colleges that are here? How much does that play into a lot of the training systems and the
And I mean,
courses and
FIU
the
is
workshops?
doing a lot, but it's like you said. It's
But who knows?
it's
about
some
that?
yeah something that the narrative has to be changed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Our storytelling is horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sound like the Gossip Girls versus NPR. It's just the communication is
Right. Flashing lights and dancing ladies.
yeah. And then then we got Pitbull and old boy coming out with "Move to Miami." Like, no, that's not it.
Right.
But
Right.
it's no to us, but that's the identity that they want. So you got to also understand, it's not always about every individual in that community. It's about what the people have identified to what they want to be known for. We see other opportunities. We see that there may be ways to expand from just being known for South Beach. But when you talk about every other city, they all have something they identify with. You still can't lose what your foundation is. You just got to expand on that. I think it's how do we come together and identify if we want to highlight the fact that Miami has this financial district. We want to highlight the fact that, it's known for the ports that are here in Miami. Because it may not be prevalent to us as everyday people, but there are people in the business and world, in the environment, that are very well aware of what exists here.
So I've never said it on camera, but we've discussed this privately. I would pull up the stats, but I don't have them. But we've had shows that have averaged anywhere from 800 to 1,200 views. Only 20 to 30% of them actually come from the Miami or South Florida area. I've been, and I've seen. I haven't been. I only went to one. The other CICs in other cities. I've seen other shows like this in other cities. Granted, we got like 400 people sitting out here today. You couldn't do an event and do what we're doing in other cities and have these kind of turnouts.
I disagree.
Where?
Go ahead. Speaking to the mic.
Yeah, tell us where. 'Cause like Miami, not Miami, Atlanta. I've seen events and talk shows like this, rooms packed, and then they got spaces like the
You're
gatherings.
saying that we don't have a lot of people here.
Yes, we don't have a lot of.
Well, I think it goes back to the problem Miami. It's not, we talk about its leadership. I agree. I agree it's politics and leadership, but it's also the people. Miami people are lazy. I said that earlier without really saying it, but I'm going to say it again.
Oh,
Miami
I'm
people are
glad you said
lazy.
it. Right.
There are opportunities here. Everything that we seek is right here in front of us. But the problem is that people don't want to take the initiative. And I said it, people take the easy way out. And
Yeah, guys, this is an interactive show, by the way, just letting you know.
speak up.
Speak up.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think the information isn't out there because every Miamian is an opportunity.
True.
Tell them that there is something out there for them to get, they will hop on it.
Yeah, I think if you tell them there's something out there for them to get, they will hop. But once you tell them they actually have to put work and money
Hello.
behind it, they start slowing
Hello.
down.
Do you know what it takes to be on a Section 8 program? These people will hop on it.
No, that part I can't, because I've seen free opportunities, free coding. There's just so many things you can give to people, and it's just about them showing up, and they won't show up.
So there's levels. There's levels to it.
Right, I was gonna say, and priorities.
Yeah.
That goes back to the leisure thing. Like, people just really like to, the weather's fantastic. You know what I mean? They're just a different level of what people want.
Because if people will hop on opportunities, there's no reason Black Tech Week shouldn't be sold out every year.
And
Windward Yard, yes. Right. Love and hip hop. So guys, just so because people can't hear you on the
Right.
screen, so
we got to repeat.
we got to repeat. So what she was saying is we used to have our show Tech Beats and Bytes at Windward Yard. There was a night where we did Tech Beats and Bytes, and Love and Hip Hop was there. Right as we was ending, they start filming Love and Hip Hop. It went from about 50, 75 people to about 300 or 400 people in the span of about 30 minutes. Now, These were people showing up just to be extras.
To possibly be on camera.
On camera that probably ended up being 7 to 10 minutes.
If that.
Worth of filming.
That's a lot.
Because they filmed Brian McKinney walking to the truck 8 times.
Right.
They filmed
so
that
you may have been caught in the shot. You may not have
8
been.
times, bro. 8 times.
A lot of Miamians just like to hype up for the BS. However, Black Tech Week, which my brother is a techie, can't go because it happens during the daytime. So a lot of the techies that have to actually take off.
But see, okay, but that goes into another. So she's saying that a lot of people down here will jump on opportunities, but Black Tech Week has the number it has because it happens in the daytime. Well, let me tell you, South by Southwest happens in the daytime, and over 20,000 people might come to that city,
Worldwide.
and that's for
Worldwide. That's worldwide. It's not just within the city.
right. But that's well, I mean, Black Tech Week theoretically is pushed and promoted worldwide, and people will fly here. But I do agree it's somewhat of the mindset. But
everyone has a tendency to say it's about priorities when it comes to, like the example of Love and Hip Hop and Tech Beats and Bytes. It's all about exposure and branding, right? So people know about Love and Hip Hop. So when they talk about it, they say it's going to be here. They have an ability to reach out to a greater vast number of people
They have fans.
than we
Right.
do.
And
So
viewers.
I don't think so, because I remember we had a Tech Beats and Bytes about this where we talked about people's interests. I don't think it's necessarily about they just want to party. It's the quality of what are they think they're going to get that also drives whether or not they're going to show up. So if you're bringing the same people to an event month after month, year after year, and you're not diversifying your speakers or the people that you do bring in, or it's just people within your local city, no one's really going to want to come. But if you start bringing and investing in the right people, people will show up. I think that we hide behind the idea that it's a party city versus really the root cause of the issue is that we, the people that sometimes do put on the event, aren't doing the due diligence to bring in the right speakers to attract the people that they actually want to attend those events.
I would agree if it's off of the basis of popularity. But sometimes the right people are the people that you don't know. You just got to have the right interest.
You have to have a mix of it, though. It's all about how you brand and sell what you're delivering.
Right. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right from the aspect of numbers, but I don't know if it affects the aspect of outcome. Because with numbers, we could bring someone like a good example would be Jack Dorsey with Twitter and Square. Mm-hmm. We could bring Jack Dorsey and say that Jack Dorsey is going to be on Tech Beats and Bytes and have the space totally packed out. But what is Jack Dorsey actually doing for the community versus if I bring Derek Pearson and Felicia Hatcher on here? There's an aspect of growth and development versus just exposure to be in the room with somebody. And I think we still chase fame. We're chasing fame. Jack isn't coming down here to hire nobody. But
you can't compare that to South by Southwest then. You know what I'm saying? So and that's the point I'm trying to make. If we have an agenda that ours is to grow in business development within our city, that's a different, agenda. Yeah, that's a different objective.
But we've had speakers here on our show that have been speakers at South by Southwest, and they've straight up said, I get a better response when I'm out of town. These are like, we're not in the aspect of hypotheticals.
But again, because the people like something that's different. You don't, if you're constantly
So we just don't
people,
respect the hometown.
That's not it. It's that you get exposure to people in the hometown, but after a while it gets played out, right? You want to see something new. So it's not to say that they can't be there, but you got to invite new energy. You got to give them a reason to keep coming back. If I'm constantly hearing the same person talk to me over and over again, it gets old. So I came the first time, that was great, and that's the thing about Miami. People show up the first couple of months or the first couple of times, but after a while it gets old. It gets old because it's the same people that they see every day. They're looking for something new. They're looking for something different. So when we talk about trying to grow the city, we got to continue to be innovative and give them something new. Give the community people something new.
But that would require them to actually pay. People want to get into stuff for free. That would require companies that are willing to sponsor. We don't have corporations that invest into the community.
We do, but people have to do the work. So the same way that we say the people in the city is lazy, the people putting the things on are just as lazy because we're not doing the things that we need to do to invest in bringing people on. It's work. Everything we do is work. When she talked earlier about the people that actually will go if there's an opportunity and do it, there's levels to it. You have people that think that they don't have to work hard because they have a great job and everything's good, so life moves on as normal. But then there are people
all
out
that
there,
noise, y'all don't turn around. Y'all hear a baby.
Sorry.
but then you do have people that there are people that are hungry and that are looking for opportunities, and then there are people that don't really care. If it's easy, yes, sign me up. But if I got to put in a lot of work, I don't. So we try to generalize a community of people that's a makeup of different levels, you know, in the pyramid. So
who would you want to see speak?
it ain't about me because I'm good.
But you can't do that. You can't speak on behalf of the people and then not talk.
But because I don't know, and this is where we do the research. So you talk about higher education earlier. Do the research, understand the community, understand what they want, and then bring those in people. Because I can tell you who I want, but I'm not a majority of the community. I'm a Nigerian girl, come from a Nigerian background.
None of us are the majority, but I'm just saying.
But what I'm saying is, I don't know. You have to ask the people. It's not about me.
So we should do a poll on social media.
She's asking about the One Heritage event, guys.
That to me was something that has so much potential for Miami because we're bringing.
What was the One Heritage event?
Basically, it is an event that brings all of our communities together.
People of color?
Why can't we say black people?
Yeah.
Right? And it's called One Heritage. And this has been going on for 3 years. They do this on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. This is what I think we're all talking about. How do you incorporate the city of Miami, all of our cultures?
What was their turnout for Wednesdays at noon?
Everyone who just simply wanted to, all of the politicians that simply wanted to say, hey, I was
Was there, cameos?
Okay, so even if somebody of a higher level of power was there, would it have changed the outcome?
no, because your community couldn't be there because this was a 12 o'clock.
So basically, we have to
But
do
I don't
everything.
even know if there's ever a good daytime, right? Because it's like I'm at work during the day, but I have kids at night. So I don't even know if there's ever truly like a time where you could be like, yeah, that's the prime time. You're going to get the most people to come out.
I don't know. I just saw this event in L.A. and it was a black tech event, and it was at the same location where David Letterman feels and my next guest is, and it was sold out. Now I didn't see them complaining about the time.
I think it's priorities. I mean,
Right.
people can take if you're really interested in doing something.
I work in corporate America, and when we're having an event that they want me to be, they're like, call out sick. And make sure you will.
So she's talking about getting a pass of calling out sick when you're working for corporate America.
Or either they'll just let you go.
Or,
They cannot tell you you're not sick. But it also
or just take a day off. If it's important to you, take a day off.
But a lot of times, if your job wants you there, they'll let you go anyway.
But what would make you, like you said, what would make me say, I'm going to call my job and call out sick, right? This One Heritage event that we have every year now, Commissioner, it's supposed to be this idea that we bring in our colored black Miami to say, how can we come to a common agreement to handle the issues that we're facing? That's pretty serious.
Yeah.
And no action comes about from it. So it goes back to the pot of this is going to be a political-based issue, and we need to hold them as a community.
We need to hold ourselves
It's,
accountable. I'm
and
tired of
I
holding
agree.
the
I think it's more. I don't think it's easy to blame the politicians, but I think it's the people. We have to come together as one and demand that some of these changes be made. Because I think that what I'm starting to, we use politics as a crutch these days, right? So rather than addressing the core issues, because we as people are more powerful than the politicians that are up there.
Until we know how to exercise our power. And
We have to exercise, but I agree with Rosie because the thing is, you have to exercise your power just by executing.
Yeah.
As one of our shirts, dreams without execution, nightmares.
And I think that
a
that's
lot of
one of
people
the-
just talk and don't do.
The bonuses of the whole Trump era is that people are realizing that. Like, you cannot
Sit around.
put
and
all
complain.
your coins in politics.
Yeah, we've addressed that, but
no, local elections are way bigger.
we've addressed midterms, but the thing is, we've talked about the fact that People don't vote because people simply aren't educated on politics in the first place. So you can't expect somebody to know the value of voting in a city commissioner when they don't know what a city commissioner does. People don't vote for a mayor because they don't know what a mayor does. People will vote for things, but we don't educate people. But you also position people into the aspect of intimidation to where some people feel scared to not know. It's one of those things like I don't want to ask because I don't want to sound stupid.
And people have been saying that for a long time. But my point in saying the whole Trump thing was that I think that sort of like was a huge like red flag. Like pay attention. We've been saying
how
this.
easily you can get into the door,
Right. And it's like you cannot. I think that really forced a lot of people to take it on themselves to make sure that they are doing the things that they need to do and not putting so much into politics.
Just got a lot of spooks that sit by the door and all they do is go home and say how scary it is. They don't actually change nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
But that's what she was saying. It's not a politician. It's personal account.
And at the end of the day, we can't bring a community together to change our politicians.
You can. I bought my neighborhood watch together. We haven't had crime.
But for those who want to play into politics, I think that there's also a bit of a movement where you're doing PACs. You have a lot of people who are trying to form PACs, so that way they can actually really play, because it is pay to play. Like they can try to deny it as much as they want, but it is a pay to play thing when you're talking about politics.
It's just like DJ said. So the music industry is a pay to play. A lot of things you just got to know what you're putting into it.
Right. You got to invest, and they'll rub your back.
But I think the more information you put out there, it will touch certain people that are trailblazers.
I think it's less the more information we put out there, it's the more information people are willing to share. Ignorance goes viral because people are subjective to more ignorance. People, if you got the same amount of people to share our video that shared that whole video with Snoop Dogg snapping off on a little white girl that was trying to come at him, or these cat videos or everything else, it still goes down to what Rosie said. It's the basis of priority. We prioritize the information we take in. How many people, I know I've done it, but in the last 30 days, have you taken the time to discontinue the certain stuff that comes through your news feed on Facebook to make sure you get more relevant information? Most people don't do that. So you start scrolling through and you're looking and it's like, oh, it's the same thing. Even the action of simply clicking the little button in the top right-hand corner and saying unfollow this kind of content because it's not relative, that's a simple step that somebody can take on their phone that they won't even do. But they'll sit around and complain, why am I getting so many cat videos? Unfollow it. You can block them. Even when we have free power and the freedom to actually make change, at the end of the day, people do not, we are, like so one big thing about Florida, we have a whole bunch of entrepreneurs. South Florida is very prone of entrepreneurs. But we have a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that don't even support each other. So if we don't support each other, we don't have the growth. South Florida alone, we are trending. Miami is a very hot IP address. We are a very hot city. So if we went into something, House of Matt is doing what he's doing because people share pictures. When they go eat his food, they take a picture of it, they post it and say how good the food was. That's just the simplest of sharing. And most of his people that share his content aren't even from down here. We take him for granted because he's here every day. But that's what we do to each other in general. We do not share. We do not support. It's that simple. You don't have to come out. We've told people before, you don't have to come out to Tech Beats and Bytes. You don't have to come out to Venture Cafe. You don't have to go out to Refresh Miami. You don't have to go to the lab. But when they post something, share it with somebody else because their algorithm and their news feed may be different. Take the time to just invite somebody somewhere. And a lot of people do not do those things. I guess that was for today's ignorance.
That was your rant.
The majority of the people that watch the show are not from here, and they're watching because they understand the opportunity that's here.
No, they watch because I actually sit on my computer for 2 hours, and I personally invite them to watch the show. It's the effort that I put in behind it. The thing is, a lot of the work we actually do never gets recognized because people take things for granted. We've done experiments where like today, we purposely didn't have a guest. We purposely didn't promote the show. And we'll say it on camera. Rosie just came back. Rosie just graduated. So we were like, Rosie, get on the stage.
Come on, sit down.
So that's what we did. But we purposely called each other and said, hey, this is what we're going to do this week. Mm-hmm. Now, as much as this has said every Thursday, as much as we have been consistent for the last year, there's nobody that spread the word. There was nobody that just accidentally supported. The people that are here are people that actually support Digital Grass in a whole. And it's not that the aspect is not what we're going through as Digital Grass. It's the aspect of what we see in this community. It's just not support. People love art doing Art Basel, but when else do they support artists in South Florida? There's $8 billion exchanged in 8 days, and the artists are starving for the rest of the 300 and something days out of the year. We are just a very cliquish. I am doing this, like you said. The people that live down here, to me, act just like politicians. They do things when they know they have the capability of being seen and recognized. They do not do things out of good faith just because. If we moved and acted off of good faith just because, this city would be on a whole nother level. But that's when I was talking earlier about the identity of a culture. The culture of our city is based off of people that don't even live in our city. At least the culture of New Orleans is based off of people that live in New Orleans. No matter how black and white it is. Chicago is based off of the people that live in Chicago. New York is based. You are a New Yorker. Once you get outside New York at a certain space, you're not black. You're not Jew. Oh, you're a New Yorker. I can tell by the way you act. They have a whole identity. Where have you been? Like, oh, you are Miami, and I can tell by the way you act. We don't have an identity outside of tourists themselves.
I disagree. Someone told me I knew this girl wasn't from Miami because she had hospitality.
Hold up, but look at what you said. You knew she, but it wasn't. I knew she was from Miami because it was basically she had one of these 20 qualities. And because she possessed this quality, ain't no way in hell she could actually be from Miami.
I think that's also because a lot of people are like, Miami is such a transient city, right? So there's that whole narrative too. Like, there's a lot of transplants here. Nobody's from Miami. And actually, no, there's a ton of
people from Miami. And that's why. So it's like Misha. The reason why we had Misha on the show. Misha is all Miami.
Yeah, but I'm 305 all the way.
Misha, like the guest on our show is generational Miami, but there's no self-identity to say, this is my city, this is my area, this is what I represent. Like anywhere. I mean,
right, but that goes
ever
back
since
to
Andre 3000 got on the stage at the Source Awards, Atlanta had an identity.
Yeah.
Atlanta been popping since the Olympics.
But that goes back to the bad storytelling. Because the storytelling doesn't match the city.
Right.
Like, it just doesn't. So I don't necessarily identify with the story that's told about Miami.
That's another thing. What is the story we tell? We still haven't said that.
Mm-hmm. I've been about 4 cities in the last 3 weeks. And when I say, oh, where are you from? I'm from Miami. And
I get it all the time.
Like, you're just like a touch of everything. We'll be able to dance when you're doing whining, salsa. That is Miami.
Right.
Right, but you still haven't said anything about making money and doing business. That still relates to a party. Like,
but they make their money in South Beach.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
But the thing about it is,
hold on, guys, because we still got people watching us. Go ahead.
No, I think you're trying to put Miami in this bubble to align with what New York or
other
Philly
cities
may be, but that's what makes Miami Miami.
I don't think I'm trying to put Miami in a bubble much as I want the bubble to actually develop.
No, you want them to identify with tech. You want them to identify with business, but they're identifying with leisure. They're identifying with fun. They've chosen.
So I agree. If we identify with tourism, at least let's be ahead of the game of something in tourism. Let's be ahead of the game of how we use virtual reality in tourism. Let's be ahead of how we track data with tourism. I don't care what we identify with. Let's just be a leader with that identification.
So if we're talking about from a cultural perspective, right? So I think that's part of the issue too, is that Miami is pushed as very Latin. You have tons of communities that are not Latin. So because of that, it's sort of changing, and I think that's one of the good things about what the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau is doing through multicultural tourism, is to show that everything isn't Latin.
Right.
And there's a lot of us who don't necessarily speak Spanish like that. So I think that if the story becomes way more inclusive, then Miami's culture that identity will develop, because it's now including Richmond Heights, Goulds, Liberty City, Miami Gardens, the Grove, Overtown, and it's right now you don't see that.
And I think that's I definitely could have said that a long time ago, but that's one of the things because you have Jazz in the Gardens that has been successful but kind of stagnant for the last 4 or 5 years. But then
Rolling
you have
Loud
something like Rolling Loud.
Rolling Loud, yeah.
Rolling Loud just is growing monumentally.
Yeah.
And that is an identity of the hip hop culture. It's a straight identification of the hip hop culture, something that went from a sellout at Bayfront Park to now they've sold out at the Hard Rock Stadium.
Right.
And I
Ultra
can see,
Music Fest.
Yeah, I can see that growing into like an ultra. I can see that with Rolling Loud. But what else? Like, what's next?
But that's now. You have to go back to history. Since 1906, you got to remember,
How long ago did the multicultural unit department start?
You will not see those effects till 5 years down the road.
When did it start? You haven't answered my question.
It started 4 years ago when we
4 years ago.
So they got one more year.
brought in
Well, no, it's a little bit older than that.
the multicultural department was just funded with $300,000 4 years ago, and they brought in.
That was when Graylin left, right?
No, Braylon is still with GMCBD. She is not over.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But she was in it before.
She
That's what
was
I'm
in it.
saying.
But it wasn't.
Because Connie wasn't there when Graylin and Petra were really.
No, when Connie came in,
This show
Right.
is very Miami. We was rolled
I was like,
last
this
week.
is 305.
this whole position
Yeah.
was established to market this multicultural. Before then, we had Braylon who was doing the Black Incentives and the Black Initiative.
Shout out to Graylin.
But they did not market it as they're trying to do what Connie's doing.
Right.
They spent all this money to bring her in so that
Right.
she can bring light to these neighborhoods. But that's not going to happen. If we've been since 1906 marketing.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix.
Right. It's
No.
It's going to take about 10 to 15 years before people identify these cultural identities.
I mean, that sounds great, but I've been here for 12 years and it's still the same.
Right. But this is
Kind of worse.
It's
But that's what her point is that we won't see the actual residue or the sort of footmarks of it until.
and it's really not the same.
And now it's worse.
goodness that they've now done it, that they're putting money into Overtown, that they're putting money into all these other cities, that they're bringing the big bus stop there to Brownsville. They're bringing the big bus to Overtown. This is how we bring tourism into these areas. That's just started in the last 2 years. So if Miami has only marketed South Beach and Little Havana, because Little Havana is our second most traveled street with over
Calle Ocho.
1 million people coming daily, right? We can't, I mean, yearly, you can't just change that overnight.
Okay, hold on. We'll save this overtime. You have to get on the mic. But the thing is, the thing is, even though we're addressing this is the part. This is just me. This is the part that I don't like. We're addressing issues with statistics, but we aren't addressing issues with solutions. That's a lot of what happens in South. You can run data however you want to. You can run data millions of ways.
And make it say what you want
Right.
it to say.
But the data doesn't change anything. Granted, how many people are running on that street doesn't reflect how many people are on those streets still living in poverty that can't even afford to buy a house down here. So the data of what's traveled, the road most likely traveled doesn't mean it's the most successful road. It's the road least traveled. So my thing is, until people can transform that data into actions of equivalency of actually building this community, the data is just what it is. Stats, you can run the stats between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. One is automatically a better player based off of stats. But you have to look at everything that
You
was
have to look
going
at
on
all the
around the
variables,
time.
yeah.
The context,
Yeah.
we don't have enough discussion about the context of depth. So without the context of depth, the conversation becomes very shallow to where it becomes a political play, because that's what you do in politics. You manipulate data to favor your position.
You can't manipulate accounting. You can go right now to the CRA's website.
Jasmine, you can manipulate anything. The only thing you can't manipulate is death.
Hello.
The only thing you can't manipulate is death. In life, you can manipulate anything. So with that being said, so the one topic we have some fun topics for you, Rosie, before you go.
We're taking a 305 break.
Just so y'all know, we do different kind of shows, but that's the tech. That's where technology and data, all this stuff comes into play.
Yeah.
Hashtag while black. Karen has continued to call the cops. We had the barbecue.
Yeah, in Oakland.
Then we
But they
had,
came back and did an electric slide on that thing. That was fire.
So now we've had the young
was
black
fire.
man that had the cops called on him for doing a contractual job to go take pictures of his building.
Investment
Investment
realtor.
real estate.
Yep, they called the cops on him, the next door neighbor. So for those who are not familiar with the story,
Yes.
he was basically doing a home inspection on a property that he was interested in. So he's going and he's taking the board down to do the inspection. So the lady next door comes out and she's like, what are you doing basically? And he's like, oh, I just put the sign in. I'm looking at the property. She basically did not believe him. So she went back in the house and called the cops. So the cops come, but the cops end up siding with him and were like, if she continues to harass you, we'll put her in jail. So that's one of the first situations where you see a flip in how
Finally.
the situation was handled.
Finally.
Right. But then you also have T.I. who was put in jail. They called the cops on him.
Arrested at the gate.
Trying to pull, because he was trying to go home. I mean, the whole Wild Black situation is very interesting. And one of the things that I want to talk about with this topic is you're seeing it now on the flip side, where you're seeing people who are doing these actions now also filming. So do you think social media is like fueling that side? I think that there's a bit of an agenda where it like a mass email went out and it was like, call the cops on black people. And you really just, because it's like happening way too much and it's getting way too much social media. So it has to be coming from both sides. It cannot just be.
I think it's, and I think that's
But
what
we're
it is.
filming it, but they're filming it too. And they're purposely
I
doing
think-
it. It's
I
a
think
purposeful
now-
action. It's willful.
I
Like,
think
it's different.
now we're in a time of what I would consider the land of overexposure. So
that's exactly.
certain people will post and expose things, or they film things now just for likes, not because they actually want to fix or solve a problem. So I'm going to record this, and I have this agenda, and I'm going to post it because I need these likes and follows, and I want my video to go viral. And sometimes the things backfire on them. And then other times it goes through. So like when the racist lawyer, when he went off in New
Right.
York,
Right.
I'm
Another
sure in
one.
his mind, he might have been thinking, everybody's going to feel the way I'm feel.
yeah.
They should know how to speak English. They're in New York. And I'm sure somewhere in his mind, he thought, I'm going to post this and my friends are going to back me. And like you said, that's that agenda. Post it and show how bad it is. We're fed up with this.
Right.
But then it becomes, wait, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Now you running around from everybody. You can't walk out of your apartment. Your whole website on Yelp has turned into a Mexican restaurant as your attorney's office. So yeah, so I think some people have overexposed topics just because there is a certain amount of hate, and they feel I can do this and now have more people to relate to.
Yeah.
Your hate groups used to have to formalize under an oak tree and burn the
very
cross.
hidden.
And
It's not hidden
It's not
anymore.
hidden anymore.
It's
I
not
do
hidden.
believe what you're saying. I do believe the agenda is to make these things more public, and I
Yeah.
do believe the Twitter thugs, and you got Twitter hate. People will hide behind the screen, and they're expressing what they've already felt before. We're just seeing it, and it's more prevalent now.
And I think it's because we have the mediums for them to do so. So I think it's always exist, but it's just that now that they have a way to communicate to the masses. And honestly, I joked about this earlier. I do a lot on the phone, and I do a lot via text, but I'm not always as vocal when it comes to how I deal with
Confrontations?
confrontation,
Uh-huh.
in person. And I think that's what social media has.
Oh, that's because you want to live.
invented.
That's why. You don't want to be in jail. You shouldn't address everything.
No, I
but
think no, because what happens is there's a human aspect that's missing in social media. So when you're dealing with someone personal, I didn't say that I don't go off on people or I don't confront people. It's just that when you see the impact of what you're saying and how it makes someone feel, it causes you to take a step back for those people that are really empathetic and do care about how.
Oh, because you're actually getting a human response, right?
Right.
Whereas
Versus when you're on the
behind
screen.
social media, you can do whatever, say whatever, but you'll never understand the impact until people start expressing themselves and commenting on your post. Like the gentleman you just mentioned, when he starts seeing those comments, it's like he had a different thought process when it went through his head when he posted it, and then now the reality, the human aspect, it always still shows up to a certain extent. But when you are able to see it physically, it's different.
That's if you're empathetic in some ways. Because, I mean, it was even bad in 2016 because you talking about people that were getting punched, pushed around, and literally assaulted at political rallies. I mean, just unfortunately, no matter what he may want to take credit for, Trump just started to build a racial divide on a whole nother level that
But
just
that's
has to be
nothing
reckoned.
new.
I don't think he built it. He just really
Enhanced
allowed
it.
it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of stuff was happening very covertly, right? Like
I agree. I
very,
just don't remember
under the
anybody
radar.
getting assaulted at a political rally.
no,
or
no.
something.
Because
but
it
that's
wasn't
the-
visible. Media showed you what they wanted to show you. So everyone in social media.
So you
Right,
think
and you
that
had a
was
lot more
happening before?
clashing. I don't think.
Hold on, we
not
got to
that
close
degree.
out. We'll have a talk afterwards.
Yeah,
We're
no,
at
but
the
I think
time,
that
right?
there's definitely like an emboldened, like sense of this sort of like racial tension, and it's different. It's a different sort of temperament. It's a different like approach, and because we have social media, we have cameras. People are like using them to do it from both sides. Like, yes, I hate these people. Let me show you me doing this, and now you have those who are victims or on the receiving end also like showing you what's happening. So it's we're in a very interesting situation. A lot of people are actually comparing it to pre-civil rights, because a lot of we're almost going through a lot of the same things that they were going through before the sit-ins and everything else.
Right.
And if we're not paying attention, if we're not aware, and we're not being very vigilant in what's happening, it will spiral the same way, because you're seeing politics are changing, laws are changing, and we need to be paying attention. And that goes back to being a very empowered and informed voter, getting involved, and not just sitting by and tweeting about it and liking it. You really have to now pay attention and get involved.
And just to close out on Latoya's point, we recently, I got a couple of messages and people were talking about, I guess, the extremity of the show, the last couple of episodes. And we've talked a little bit more about racial issues, and we've talked about other personal issues. And, you know, everybody's like, oh, I thought it was just about tech. No, it's called Tech Beats and Bytes. We've had entertainers, we've had people in technology, but the Bytes also focus on not just food, but bites of information from what's going on in our community. Yeah. And I just wanted to let some of our viewers know, we talk about the issues that have become more pressing and not issues that have become more trending. The reason why we've addressed more social issues is because it's becoming more closer to home. And when you see these things happening, these are the conversations we have to have, because a lot of people rather talk about who's getting divorced on Married in Medicine, and they rather talk about the royal wedding. I didn't get an invite. I don't know why you guys are going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch somebody else get married, but you won't show up to other people's weddings.
They didn't get an invite.
The fact of the matter is, we're talking about issues that affect us, friends, families, and those that are close to us, and we need a platform to talk about things beyond just entertainment and trash. So unfortunately, if educational content that deals with real world issues are not something you want to see on social media, you probably will not enjoy Tech Beats and Bytes. But if you want to be informed with information that's going on with innovation, technology, entrepreneurship in our community, this is the show for you. So we're not going to change our format because you feel offended that we're addressing real issues. If you feel offended, most likely that means we were talking to you and something that's going on inside of you that you need to address. So once again, thank you to our supporters of the Knight Foundation, World Famous House of Mac, Cosmology, Timeline Brewery, Junction 2027, and Junction Halls. We appreciate you guys for coming out. We'll continue with overtime, but we'll catch you next week.